I love how God is in charge. It was the perfect song to the intro because I'm going to share a secret with you today. Ashley shared a lot of secrets. I'm going to share one more for you. Because if you're like me, I think many of you are, if you're like me, you have attended hundreds of classes in your lifetime. Conferences, retreats, you name it. We've done it, right? We've got a stack of books at home that we're still reading. We've got a ton of things, all on the spiritual path, right? We are committed to our spiritual growth. But I've spent decades working on this, and I've discovered that there is a secret to advancing your consciousness. Would you like to know what that secret is? A few of you would. Would you like to know? Yes. Because all of those things are great, and they're wonderful. Having a good teacher can make a big difference, can it? Having someone guide the way for you, whether it be an author or a speaker at a conference. But there's one thing that I have found that has made a marked difference in my up-leveling of my consciousness. And that is this: are you teachable? Are you teachable? Because too many times I have felt like, well, I know it. I got this now. And there was a time in my life when I thought, when I get to a certain point in my consciousness, it'll be smooth sailing. Anyone besides me think that? It's like, it should be easy by now, right? Why are there still significant challenges that come up? Because we are here to be teachable. We are here, we chose to incarnate as a human being so that we could integrate lessons and lifetime experiences. I love April's treatment, the fullness of life. The fullness of life includes it all, doesn't it? It's not just the good, wonderful times, it's everything that happens to us. And it's our job as spiritual beings to go, this might not be what I would have preferred in my life right now, but what nuggets of wisdom can I glean? What are the takeaways from this that I can move forward and use in my life to make my life go up and up and up in my awareness of myself as a spiritual being on this planet? I have found that that is the number one element for me, that I have to continue to know that I'm teachable and that I'm open to whatever life brings me as a conduit for my growth. Are you with me? I have to be open to that, because as soon as I shut that down, all of a sudden, I know it all. And the universe goes, oh yeah? Let's see what you know. And as soon as I open up and go, there's something here. There's gold in this. What's that old story about the little boy? There's a pony in here somewhere. There's got to be something within each and everything, each and every person that comes into my life, even if they are rubbing me the wrong way, even if they are not acting in as kind a manner as I would like. These are the opportunities for me to grow beyond where I am right now, because this is the bottom line. I want to be better today than I was yesterday. I want to be better tomorrow than I am today. I want to keep growing on my path. Let me tell you, when I am teachable in my failures, when I am teachable in my betrayals, when I am teachable, when I'm stumbling along in life thinking, I sure don't have this yet, that's where the real essence of life, the real consciousness starts to come through me, because I start to lean into a whole other way of being. That there is a greater God beyond me. We teach that God is both immanent and transcendent. And when I lean into the mystery of life, that there is something greater than me, my whole being opens up. And I get to experience life in a whole new way. This means that when we have challenges in our life, that we have to approach things differently. What was Einstein saying? You can't solve a problem at the level at which it was created. And there's no better example of this than something that happened just a few weeks ago. There was an op-ed that was published in the Washington Post by two people who live in Minneapolis. And the two people were Louis King and Jerry McAfee. And Jerry McAfee is the pastor of a Baptist church in Minneapolis. Minneapolis has gone through some really tough times lately. Of course, that's where George Floyd was killed. And so the community has been trying to stabilize after significant destabilization. Something happened this spring, though, that really came into the crux of this, where last spring, 3 small children were shot in the community in North Minneapolis, it's a tough neighborhood. 2 of those children died. One was significantly injured. And the people in that community reached that point, that tipping point that said, not in my neighborhood any longer. We're not going to settle for just the drive-bys and the gang-related activities and the drugs and all of that. We're done. We have to find a way. We have to be teachable to something that is greater going on here. What can we find? And as the community came together, they decided to start a project called 21 Days for Peace. Now, it wasn't that they were just going to do peaceful activities for 21 days. They named it that because it takes 21 days for a habit to become habit. And I've never heard of any other community doing this. They decided to do this. They talked with the police and said, what are the hot spots in this community? What are the corners, the street corners, where drugs are always traded, where people are shot? What are the worst corners in this neighborhood? Well, the police had that data very readily available. And they said, okay, we're going to take those. We're going to set up lawn chairs. We're going to set up lawn chairs, 2 people at a time, and they had people volunteer. Okay, I'll take that corner, I'll take that corner. And they just showed up and sat down in their lawn chairs. You see the sign back there, 21 Days for Peace. And these were people that were just members of the congregation, people that were neighborhood activists, people that just decided enough is enough. We're going to camp out on these street corners until something starts to change. So they started in late May of this year. June, homicides significantly dropped. July, they stayed dropped. August, they stayed dropped. All summer long, for the very fact that people were setting up their lawn chairs, they decided we're going to be in a teachable way here. How can we interact with our community in a more solid, loving way? And as they did so, crime has dropped dramatically. As the colder weather comes on, and in Minneapolis it definitely gets colder, starting right around this time of year, they're going to move indoors and they're going to have activities with some of the younger people. And they're going to, again, try to integrate within the community because they've said, we want to be teachable. How can we know this? So in this op-ed, I want to read just a portion of it. They say, what makes this simple act of sitting so powerful? The people sitting on these corners in their chairs are members of the community. We know our young people, and they know us. But more importantly, we represent one of the strongest bastions of moral authority left in these areas, the Black church. We draw on the power of congregation, of family, of friends, of community to try to interrupt the violence. And that's the name of this op-ed piece, Interrupt the Violence. And that's what I love. They decided they were going to use their teachable moment of children being killed to interrupt the violence by simply showing up as love, as themselves. I think this is one of the most powerful ideas out there today. And as they continue, I started thinking, where am I going to set up my lawn chair? I'm talking figuratively here. Where am I going to set up my lawn chair so that I can be teachable in the moments that I need to show up and represent love? Show up and represent kindness and compassion. Where am I going to set up my lawn chair? Because that's what we're called to do, right? We are called to be the essence of those God qualities each and every day, especially when it's hard to do so. And to sit on a corner where drugs were routinely bought and sold, that takes a lot of guts, doesn't it? That takes a courage that many, many people may not have. And yet I know I can, in my own way, contribute to the up-leveling of my consciousness, which does what? It raises the consciousness of the world. What's that? The butterfly effect. What I do here today is impacting somebody in Nepal or somebody somewhere millions of miles away, maybe. My consciousness makes a difference. And that's what we teach here in religious science, that we are an important cog of this one. If I really am living these principles, am I showing up in the very highest and best way that I know how to do? And can I be teachable in moments when I just don't meet the mark? And can I say to myself, well, that didn't work. Let me try again. Let me try again. I love that example. And I know that when I show up in my life, I want to be able to say, I am continuing to move the barometer on my consciousness. Alan Cohen has a wonderful story that he talks about where he was doing a seminar in Greece. And in this seminar, this woman named Georgia said to the whole group there that was gathered for this seminar, she said, I've had a terrible time with my marriage. My husband has been abusive. He's clearly not on board with how I would like our marriage to be. I've even asked him for a divorce, and he refuses to give me a divorce. And so she said, since he wouldn't give me a divorce, I decided, well, if he won't love me, then I will love me. So she sat down and she wrote a love letter to herself. I'm going to read part of it. She said, I wrote myself a long, poetic love letter, the kind I wanted to receive from a passionate, appreciative lover. And it went like this. Dear Georgia, you are fabulously beautiful, sexy, brilliant, and intriguing. I cannot wait to see you, hold you in my arms, and make love to you with all my heart and soul. She said, that felt so good that the next day I wrote another letter, and the next day another letter. And she said, what happened was her husband found these letters, and he assumed that there was someone else in her life from reading these letters. And he said to her, I can't compete with that. I will grant you the divorce. Now, the irony here is that when Georgia wasn't loving herself, she attracted the man coming in that didn't love her either. But as soon as she loved herself, as soon as she upped her consciousness, her game, she was teachable, she drew in the release to the bondage that had been there before. I love that. I love that when we are open and available for the lesson that's right there waiting for us, we know that everything is going to follow in accordance with that which we are intending. The law of attraction is very specific. It keeps bringing those things to us that we love, we hate, we steadily contemplate. So how am I contributing to what I'm bringing into my life? One of my favorite stories that Alan Cohen teaches His teacher was Helen Charlton. And he talks about her quite a bit, especially in The Dragon Doesn't Live Here Anymore, which is one of my favorite books of his. And he talks about how one day in the class that he was with his teacher Hilda, a student stood up and he said, "I can't believe it. I just got ripped off by a mechanic. And the mechanic promised me that he was going to fix my car for $500 and everything would be done and everything would be okay." Well, he took my $500, the car still is not fixed, and he's not intending of doing anything more with the car. And so Hilda said to him in front of the rest of the class, "If I were offering you a week-long course on following your intuition, and I guaranteed you that after this course you would be better able to hear your inner guidance and more willing to follow it, would you take the class?" He said, "Well, of course." Because he had said to the class, I had this feeling, I knew that something was off about this guy, but I ignored it. So Hilda goes on to say, "Well, if this course that I was going to offer you, if the tuition was $500, would you pay it?" He said, "Well, that would be a bargain." And she said, "Well, then consider yourself lucky. You got the entire course from your mechanic in one day." And that's the truth. She found a way to open up the conversation that this was a teachable moment for him. And that this too was for his highest good. And this allowed him to trust that inner voice that is there all the time, guiding and directing. Are we teachable? Katherine Ponder is one of my favorites also. She, of course, is very well known for her prosperity books. But she talked about something that happened back in the 60s. This was when she first started out as a minister. And she said that there was, back at that time, the chiropractors were under severe attacks by the American Medical Association. Chiropractors were seen as the devil because they were taking away business from medical doctors. And so they were trying a lot of things through the legal system to shut down chiropractors. And in the state of Alabama, the AMA sued 40 chiropractic doctors back in the 1960s. And so the chiropractors are like, we just want to show up and do our job. We just want to help people. But they were taken to court, and they were really upset about this. One of them happened to know Katherine Ponder. That's a good person to know, because he went to her and he said, "What should we do? How should we handle this?" This is a real teachable moment for them. And Katherine Ponder said, "I want you to pray immediately, not only for your highest good, but for the highest good of those doctors as well, those who are suing you. I want you to pray for their highest good. I want you to pray for the lawyers. I want you to pray for the judge. I want you to pray for everyone involved in this whole matter. Not that you're going to win, but that the highest and best for everyone is seen and experienced." And lo and behold, they went back, and the media was really hyping this. Well, it started to die down a little bit. And so the judge rescheduled the case, like 6 months later down the line. And they continued to pray and to bless all those that were involved in this legal situation. In the fall, guess what happened? The judge dismissed the case. It was barely mentioned in the news. And the president of the Alabama Chiropractic Association accompanied one of the doctors to a church service to thank Katherine. She was a pastor of a church at that time. And later the laws were changed so that that situation could never happen again. Now, I love the idea here that they were open and available to a whole different way rather than pray for us to win this case. And they were available to pour blessings onto all those that were involved. Because of that, everything shifted not only within their community, their practices, but the entire state. When we are open to I am here to learn from this somehow, some way. I know that there is a nugget of gold here for me. How can I then release the essence of who I am to know the greater good so that all is unfolding exactly as I intended and wanted to? And yet, too many times I find I get stuck because it's not working out the way that I wanted it to. Am I the only one in this room that that's ever happened to? I get stuck because I think, well, that's what I want. And yet there's a greater good that has yet to be revealed. A greater good that has yet to be revealed. And so if I really trust this, if I really trust these teachings, I know that every person who comes into my life, every experience, every job, every whatever, is the perfect right thing for me in that moment. And it's up to me to learn from each and every circumstance. This has shifted how I look at things tremendously. And it has up-leveled my opportunity to grow even in the times of darkness. Even potatoes can grow in the dark. And I know that there are times when I can still show up and grow even in the darkness of some of my life experiences. That's some of the richest, most fertile time for me to grow if I simply am available to it. Ernest Holmes has a wonderful quote here. He says, "Light the candle of love, human kindness, forgiveness, and understanding in your own soul, and let it shine brilliantly. Remain steadfast in the radiance of that spiritual light of truth within you." So I love how he keeps reminding us, just keep your own light on. Keep your own light on. Stay in your own spiritual lane. Don't worry about what's happening to others. What's happening in my spiritual lane? Am I growing? Am I available? Am I teachable? Am I moving through experiences knowing that I'm a better person today, spiritually, emotionally, than I was 5 years ago? This is a great way for you to look back. If you're still experiencing the same problems you did 5 years ago, you got some growing to do. Because we are all going to have challenges, right? But when we up-level those challenges, that's how we know we're growing. That's how if I was still experiencing the exact same things from 5 years ago, I would know there's a hitch in my get-along here. What can I do to uncover what needs to be experienced? Marcia Gay Harden is a powerful actress. And she says, most people think because I've made it that I haven't ever gone through. She said, I speak to students who are going through acting classes and people who are in college preparing themselves for this kind of career. And they look at me and they think, oh, you got it all. You've made it. And they forget that I too had my moments of challenge. And she told a story to Oprah at one point where she said, I was having a terrible time. I was young. I had graduated from college. I was going on calls. She said, I was working all day. I would go on my lunch hour to the place where they would tell me, you can do these auditions, and then I'd go back to my work, and then I'd go to the auditions later on. She said it was nonstop, and I wasn't getting anywhere. And she said, I was living in New York, and it was snowing, and I wasn't used to that, and it was just cold and dreary. And she said, one day I'd had it. It was freezing cold outside, and I'd reached my depths of depression. And she said she was literally weeping on the sidewalk, and that it was not a pretty cry, the ugly cry, what they call that, where, she's just sobbing, and she goes, and her nose was running because it was cold, and it was just awful. And a homeless man walked up to her, and he said, what's wrong, honey? And she said, and she started giving part of her story, and he said, well, do you have a home to go to? Yes, but, well, do you have something to eat today? Yes, but, well, you're doing good. You're okay. This too shall pass. And he turned and he left. And she said, in that moment, this stranger that didn't even know her, she said, he didn't say it in a mean way. He just was reminding her of the blessings that she had and that he wanted to lift her up and know the truth. And sure enough, the truth was, she got a job eventually, which led to another job, to another job, to another job. When we get to those places, when we allow even strangers to teach us, when we allow the universe to speak to us and through us, when we know that other people are the mouthpiece of God sometimes, that sometimes I'll be watching a movie and I'll go, oh my God, that's the answer to the question I've been looking for. When we're open and available to information and to lessons and to teachings coming to us and through us, life changes just like that. Just like that. Carolyn Mace talks about how we're all mystics. We're all mystics. And see, life has changed. Mystics used to go into a convent or to a monastery, and they could om, and they could just concentrate and have a contemplative life. And nowadays, we're doing that while we're holding down full-time jobs, raising families, having all kinds of issues just from being in the everyday world, and we're still called to be mystics. And she talks about how, because of that, our role as mystics is even changed. She says a mystic is a person called by God to change the world through the power of their souls, working in intimate union with the divine. This classic archetype of the mystic is being revised for our contemporary spiritual community because the world is now the monastery. The world is our monastery, and many are being called into mystical service. And she says, how do you know if you're a mystic? She gives us three things. She said, first of all, the mystic recognizes that they're being called. Yep, I'm here. I'm here to be a powerful force for good. Secondly, learns to build a soul with stamina. Don't you love that? Soul with stamina. A soul able to channel grace and heal through prayer individually and at a distance. And thirdly, changes the world in silence, invisibly through the power of their souls. That is, I need to memorize that slide. Because I forget that by my simply showing up and prayerfully and at a distance, knowing the highest and best for anyone, and by showing through my own consciousness the silence at which I remain at peace rather than getting all rattled. That's the opportunity for me to be a modern mystic today. That's how I can invisibly lift the world up. And isn't that what we're called to do? We're called to lift our consciousness, which lifts the entire world. Let's take a deep breath. I've just thrown a lot at you. Take a deep breath in and let it out. And as we do so, we are integrating. There is something here, and I speak my word for each one of you. There is something here that you have heard today, maybe not even through me, through the music, whatever, that has lifted you to a place of a new realization that your consciousness is different right now than when you walked through that door. And that you are going forth knowing that you're being called as a modern mystic to be teachable in all phases of your life. And to understand that there is so much good here if we simply can show up for it. And that I too, just by my temerity, by my stamina of my soul, saying I'm going to be something that is a powerful force for good in this world. And whether that means that I show up as kindness to someone that may be not extending that same kindness to me, I will do that. I will do that. I know that each one of us is called to something. And it can even change over your lifetime. What are you called to? And are you teachable to rise to a new level in consciousness? I hope this week that there's a spark. There is something that is lifting you to a whole new way of being in this world. Namaste.